There are three things I'm going to talk about today. The first is I'm going to say forget the macro. People are spending too much time thinking about where's the market headed. Doesn't matter. Forget the macro. Two, focus on what you can control. What more can you do? And then the third topic is what I call the system for getting what you want. That's my system for how do you get what you want in your career. And in the back of your mind, keep this idea in mind as we go through this, which is if there's one thing that you can change that would have a massive impact in your career, what would that be? Just one thing. And you can't say the economy either, because not even Obama can change that. So if you could change one thing in your career, what would that be? Now this is why I'm here today, because a few months ago I was up here for a presentation, sitting out in the audience for a Wall Street career outlook. And about halfway through the presentation, they asked if people had any questions. And I stood up and I asked this one question. And I said, I feel like I'm sitting in a room of buggy manufacturers right after Henry Ford's first automobile rolled off the production line. People looked a little bit confused. And I went on to say, you know, if you were sitting in that room, you would hear all sorts of questions, which is, well, are people really going to want to buy this automobile? Is the buggy market going to come back? What's going to happen to our jobs? And I said, you know, on Wall Street today, a lot of people are asking those sorts of questions. We were just talking about, and you used two metaphors. One was the newspaper business and travel agencies. Travel agencies, there used to be a great family business. In every town across America, there was a great family business that was a travel agency. Not anymore. But the questions of, is it going to change? Is it going to come back? Are we at an all-time low? Is it secular change? You know, amongst this demographic, job loss on Wall Street since 2007 is around 25%. And what I said is, everyone in this room has one question. And it's the same question that I had when I stepped back in my career. And that was almost 15 years ago when I was an associate in Goldman's tech banking group in Menlo Park. And it was a horrible time. It was a horrible time to be in banking. Half my class was laid off. Half the office was laid off. The office was shut down. And I remember the day that it all changed for me, which is I was walking through the office and I was walking past word processing, and I ran into this associate from my associate class. And he's this cool guy, good energy, and he looked at me with these sad eyes, and he told me that he'd just been laid off. And my heart sank because it didn't make sense to me. This is Goldman Sachs. Our assets are our people and all that stuff. And before that, I'd been a lifer. I believed that as long as I worked hard and kept my head down, that Goldman Sachs would take care of me. And from that point on, everything changed. And I realized that it wasn't the firm's job to take care of me. It was my job to take care of me. And so I stepped back in my career and I began to think about it completely differently. And I asked this one question. How do you get what you want in your career? And in fact, I asked a bigger question. How do I get what I want in my career and life? And what do I want? Because I didn't know. And I had these four things. I want to get paid. I want to get promoted. I want to work less hours. I don't want to be slaving away day and night. And I want to create more career options. Because at the time, I was in the technology investment banking group in Menlo Park. There weren't jobs in banking. There weren't jobs in technology. There weren't jobs in Menlo Park. I wanted to create more options. So how do you do that? I didn't know. What I did know was that almost everybody who I knew in banking had set a very low bar. They were saying, how do you hold on to your job? How do I not get fired? It's a low bar for me. I didn't join Wall Street so that I could hold on to my job, not get fired. I wanted to keep creating the life that I truly wanted. So I stepped back. I said, how do you do that? If your career is your vehicle for your life, how do you keep driving in the right direction? So I started to read. I started to read everything I could find. books on careers, books on success, all of the genres of self-help. And inside my career, inside Wall Street, I began to evaluate all the careers of everybody around me, asking myself, what makes the biggest difference for those who are truly winning? How do they do what they do? And I began to model the career of Wall Street. And at that point, I also took the job as staffer at Goldman. That gave me a chance to have direct insight, not only to leadership in the firm, but to hundreds of bankers across the region. What do the winners do? What do the losers do? How do you keep moving your career in the way that you want to? Now, there's a problem with a lot of this stuff. If you talk to people today and you say, well, what more can you do? You know what they do? They start to list out, well, you've got to get your resume together. You've got to be prepared. You've got to keep networking. The real question is when? When? When are you going to do all this? Where are you going to find the time to do all this? And you're not. And the number one philosophy in my approach is that you're already working hard. You're already doing everything you can. You've already worked your 100-hour weeks. You've already got the education. And it's not a question of working harder. It's a question of working smarter. It's a question of working smarter. It's what I call a directed career. A directed career says add more intent, add more deliberate intent, add more deliberate action to what you do, and develop the skills. Develop the skills to be exceptional at it. When I stepped back and I started reading, literally I read everything that I could find, and over the course of the last 15 years, I've read basically anything, hundreds or thousands of books from the world of self-help, from skills development. I've gone and trained with some of the best trainers in the world. And when I stepped back and I was doing all my research, I wasn't looking for the individual ideas. It didn't matter to me what Benjamin Franklin said or Napoleon Hill said or Donald Trump or Andrew Carnegie. The individual ideas are important, but what I was really looking for, what are the kernels of success? What are the kernels? What are the underlying ideas that you can extract and apply for yourself? And I kept coming back to these two ideas. Those who create success have definitive purpose. They know what they want. Secondly, they have a system to get it. It's not just a matter of do a couple of things right. It's about developing for yourself an entire system. Think about the CFA. The CFA is a system of learning. It's not like you show up on day one and they throw you all these materials and then, you sit an exam. It's built up, process by process, module by module, class by class, exam by exam, to the point where you take your learning all the way from the beginning to the end. And this is the way I work with my clients. So one of my clients wants to run the firm. He wants to run the big firm that he works for. Now, many people aren't going to set a goal like that, but they become my sorts of clients, people who are ambitious, who want to keep moving forward. And we develop a system for him to do that, an entire process that we work week in, week out, that presumably he's going to work for a number of years in order to go from where he is today all the way to, hopefully, for him running the firm. This is one of my favorite movies. Who's seen this movie? Now, I love this movie for a lot of different reasons, but there's this one particular scene where Bradley Cooper's character, Eddie Morrow, is sitting down with Robert De Niro, and he's taken $12,000 in 10 trading days and made $2.3 million. And De Niro's like this big-time investor, and De Niro wants to know how he's done it. And De Niro's right-hand man is a real cynical guy, and he looks at him and he says, this kid's got delusions of grandeur. And Eddie Morrow looks at me and he says, no, I have a recipe for grandeur. I'm not saying what I have is a recipe or a secret. People talk about the secret. It's not a secret, it's a system. It's very straightforward. It's step by step, working from where you are today to where you want to get to. Like this client I talked about. Every week, we work on that system. We have a detailed plan and we work through that every week. How many people do you know? How many people do you know who have not only goals for where they want to take their career, but a detailed plan to get it? If you were modeling a company, If you were analyzing a company, you would know everything about that company. You'd read everything that they'd ever published. You'd go through all the Ks, you'd go through all the Qs. You'd look at all the investor presentations. You'd understand what do they do well, what do they not do well. You'd understand what their comparative advantage is. You'd understand what their business strategy is. How many people do you know who do that in their career? Right? And when you do, imagine what you can do in your career. Imagine how you can transform your career. Think about it like this. At some point you showed up at school and you're looking up at the board and you've got all these squiggly lines that are the alphabet. And you don't know the alphabet and you're learning the alphabet. And at some point you're learning your ABCs and you don't know how to put it all together. Then you're putting together words and sentences and paragraphs. 12 years later, you're sitting your SATs. It's a system of learning from where you've gone from learning your ABCs to your SATs. Then you graduate college, and what happens? Bang! Bang, you're on your own, right? You graduate college, and you're on your own. And so when I stepped back, I said, well, wouldn't it be great if, just like for your entire life, you were given this process, you were guided, wouldn't it be great if I could take all of my years of work? Because, by the way, my approach wasn't this tidy. I meandered. Almost 15 years, I researched this. I kept moving. I kept making decisions. But I didn't build for myself the system. I was aggregating all of the ideas, putting it all together. I said, wouldn't it be great if I could put that together for other people so that you would have a roadmap to follow, a series of tools, so it'd be a lot easier for other people than it was for me. It's a hard time right now. It's a hard time for a lot of people, not just on Wall Street, in our economy. And people are looking for answers. And this is my system. I call it the system of getting what you want. The system of getting what you want. You see, this is not some secret formula like the kernels, secret herbs and spices, or this secret formula for Coca-Cola. It's 5 steps. Define it. Define what you want. Getting it is the intelligence behind the system. Plan it, execute it, and getting skills. And so if I generalize this, really there's 2 elements to it. There's process and skills. It's understanding the process that you run in your career, and it's developing the skills that enable you to do that. Make sense? Let's put it to work. So the first step is define it. Most of the books that you read on setting goals are rubbish. Most of the ways that people go about setting goals are wrong. And the simple reason for that is because people say stuff like, my goal is to have a Ferrari, right? My goal is to have a Ferrari. That's a great goal, who doesn't want the Ferrari? But define it, the concept of define it is not to set the goal, it's to define the goal in such a way that you can create a process to achieve it. Here's what I mean by that. I want to be II ranked. I want to be II ranked. Great. A research analyst, every research analyst wants to be II ranked, but it's a false goal. The goal is, what is your process to become the best research analyst you can be, to build your group of target clients, to build your group of company relationships such that you get the votes to become II ranked. It's like The Secret, this secret, the law of attraction, like, oh, I want that Ferrari, and just imagine that Ferrari coming to you. Oh, you feel like you're driving it now. No, it doesn't work that way. When I train people to reach goals, I don't train people to reach their goal. I train them to become the person that can achieve that goal. Don't focus on the goal. Focus on becoming the person that can achieve your goal. Because when you become that person, success becomes inevitable. Success becomes inevitable when you become the person that can achieve your goal. So define it. What is your direction. Now, not everyone in the room is on the research side. I'm using the research side generically as an example, as a set of frameworks. Apply this to yourself. So when you're defining the goal, what is the goal? Who do you want to be? Do you want to be Meredith Whitney? Be the axe, start your own firm. Henry Blodgett, take a different direction. Ray Dalio. Everyone wants to be Ray Dalio. Anthony Noto went from research to the CFO at the NFL to banking at Goldman, transforming his career, making these changes. It is possible to make these career changes. It's not easy to do. But that's what having a system, having an approach, developing the skills is all about. Byron Wien, long term. And I put up here Heather Bellini. Heather Bellini is an analyst at Goldman Sachs, a software analyst at Goldman. And I put her up here for one specific reason. Because the rumor is that Goldman pays her $3 million a year, recruited her for $3 million a year. So when people tell me there aren't opportunities at the moment, it's wrong. There are opportunities. There aren't many. They're harder to get. But that's why you just have to be better and better. When I stood up and spoke in the Career Outlook, I said it's a good thing that it's gotten harder on Wall Street. It's a good thing because the street needs to change. The practices that were going on before the bubble burst, I was a distressed debt investor. You know, I saw some of the ugliest sides of it, and the street needed to get better. And it's a good thing for individuals because to keep competing, to keep getting what you want on Wall Street, you need to raise the bar. You need to become better than you were. You need to compete harder. And no one came to Wall Street for a cushy job, for job stability. You came here so that you could challenge yourself to be the best you can be. So how do you define it? What's the process step? Here's a process step. I call this the dual track roadmap. This isn't a typo, status quo, status quo. Here's the concept. A lot of people get caught up in the question, what do I want? So define it gets very hard because they're saying, I don't know what I want, man. I don't know what I want. And I get that. I spent a lot of years. My number one question was, what do I want? I spent a lot of years researching that question. There's a massive problem with it. When people don't know what they want, they don't do anything. They don't take action. The key is this. Even if you don't know what you want, you're starting at the status quo. Even if you don't know what you want, you're starting from where you are right now. And that track will lead you to your other tracks. So wherever you sit right now is where it all begins for you. And as long as you focus on doing the best job you can and crushing that track, really truly going for it, forgetting about the cynics, forgetting about the pessimists sitting around saying, what's going to happen and what can I do and comp is down and people are getting late. So what? Forget the macro. It's outside of your control. It just pollutes your mind with negative thoughts. Focus on what you can control and focus on making your career the best it can be. And then there's this other track. My view is that if you work on Wall Street, you're always running at least one, you're running your existing track and at least one other track. Careers on Wall Street are highly volatile. It's about optionality, it's about security, it's about continually looking to enhance your career. What does this mean? It means as long as, when I was in technology banking, I knew that I had to make a change. Not because I didn't know if it would come back. Forget the macro, right? Didn't know if it would come back. The tech group at Goldman that I left is blowing the doors off right now. They're doing great, right? Tech has come back. I wasn't making a bet on that. I was saying, I don't want to be here long term. So I said, what's my other track? And I didn't know, but remember my 4 points I came back to. One of them was I wanted to create more career options. There weren't a lot of career options coming out of tech banking. I moved across the firm to leverage finance, to fixed income, and it opened up all of my career options. It's how I then transitioned. I left the firm and moved to the buy side as a vice president, which is very hard to do. It was part of that transition, focusing on that other track. What's your other track? Is it a different job inside your firm? Is it a different job elsewhere? I changed jobs 4 times at Goldman. Over 8 years, I did 4 different jobs because it was open to me and I wanted to keep exploring. So what's your other track? And where do you keep moving towards? Now, some people say to me, I hear this all the time, man, that sounds like a lot of effort. You know, it sounds like a lot of effort. It is. It is. When I was doing all of this, I was working my 70 hours a week on Wall Street and 20 hours a week on all of this for 10 years. But it wasn't a lot of effort for me. It was what I wanted to do. You know, people on Wall Street, you're not going home and watching Buck Wild. You're not the folks who are watching your average of 6 hours TV a night, right? When Warren Buffett goes home, he reads 10 Ks. Is that a lot of effort for Warren Buffett? No. It's what he wants to do. It's what he wants to do. This isn't a lot of effort if it's what you want to do. And for me, nothing matters to me more than getting what I want. So spending my life dedicated to how do I figure out what I want and how do I get it, that's what I want to do. It's what I enjoy doing. So that's define it. How do you set the direction? How do you set the path? It's the first step. Second step is getting it. Getting it really is the intelligence behind the system. What getting it says is this: step back and ask yourself, how do you truly win in the job that you're in? How do you get what you want? How do you truly win at it? And contrast that to this poor fellow. By the way, how many people's offices do you go into where there's stuff stacked on the floors and everywhere around them? They're covered in paper. This poor fellow, he's got the model that says, put your head down and work hard. Oh yeah, grind away and hope that someone notices. Hope that it pays off. Hope that you get paid. Hope you get promoted. You know what? Most of those people don't. It's a model I call the good soldier. You know what happens to the good soldier? They storm the hill, like in the movies, and they get shot. That's what happens to the good soldier. So you step back and you say to yourself, what does it take for you to truly win in what you're doing? And there are 3 steps to this: the frameworks, the principles, and the strategies. The frameworks are otherwise called the models of success. And I joke about this. I say models of success are like lingerie models. You want as many of them around as possible. You want to find as many models of success as possible and ask yourself, what do they do? Benjamin Graham, David Einhorn, Ray Dalio. What do they do that makes them successful? By the way, here's the key. They tell you. They tell you what they do. How many books have been written on Warren Buffett? Ray Dalio tells you what he does. Now, one of my favorite quotes is a quote by Emerson. It says, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." It doesn't apply here. It doesn't apply here, okay? What they do that's led them to success, they've carved that path. There are people inside all of your firms. There are many people who are going nowhere. And then there are a small number of people who have carved out their own path, who are winning, who are succeeding. What do they do? Ask yourself, truly, what do they do that makes them successful? And follow that path. The other aspect of getting it is getting beyond mediocre and conventional thinking. Mediocre and conventional thinking. Here's an idea from hedge fund capital raising, what they call the 3 Ps of marketing: pedigree, product, performance. You know, and it's an analogy from the marketing world, and it's an okay idea, right? But it's a bogus idea. If you believe that's the entirety of raising capital in the hedge fund world, then you're going to be in this box, and you're probably going to fail. When I work with capital raisers, with hedge fund managers, when I work with those folks, I teach them very specific tools. And those very specific tools are all about understand what it is about what you do that other people want. And understand what they're buying and position what you do in exactly the way that you need to position it for them. Our favorite weatherman, Al Roker. Think about Al Roker, okay? Al Roker is worth $25 million. He makes a couple $1 million a year. Do you think that Al Roker is worth $25 million because his weather forecasts are accurate? No. How many research analysts are out there? How many analysts are out there who think their job is to model EPS and get it as close to the pin as possible? They think that if they can model EPS more closely than someone else, then they're going to build for themselves a successful career. False. Smart people, the best investors in the world, and smart people recognize that most of what happens in financial modeling is unknowable, period. Very few economists even saw the credit crisis. Are you kidding me? Entire credit crisis, the recession. There are very few companies out there that can even model their own earnings. The job of an analyst, sure, it does include the aspects of being as good and as accurate as you can be at financial modeling. But if you believe that that's your key to getting it, then you're going to fail. Think about this question. If you owned a hot dog stand, what advantages would you most desire on your side? There you go. Branding, maybe it's condiments. You guys can have all of that. You can have all of that on your side. Because I only want one thing. One thing. I want an audience that's hungry for my hot dogs. It's all I want, right? It's all I want. If you're on the sales side, if you're a research analyst, if you're in a hedge fund or private equity shop suggesting ideas to your PM, you want people who are receptive to your ideas, who are hungry for your ideas. How do you build that hunger? How do you build that burning desire for what you do? How do you get people interested in what you do? Think about it this way. Getting it. Who do you want to be? This or Meredith Whitney? You want to be, another blue suit face in the crowd? Right? What makes you stand out in what you do? What makes you special in what you do? If you're a banker, if you're an investor, if you're an analyst, whatever you do, what makes you stand out? Meredith Whitney, is it her bold calls? Remember, they don't need to be right. She hasn't been right on the muni market yet, right? She might be over time, but she hasn't been. But it doesn't matter, because what matters is that she makes bold calls, that she has an opinion, that she's informed, that every idea she comes up with is well thought through. Or do you want to be these people, right? Heather Bellini, for instance, the inside scoop of Goldman, what is her key to getting it? She hustles. Heather Bellini works 23 hours a day. She's always hustling for her clients. That's her thing. That's what she does. And the frameworks, remember, what I've shared with you here are general ideas, are general frameworks. The key to getting it is to know what your frameworks are in your job, in your career. So the second step to getting it are the principles. Think of the principles like this. If you were to walk your office and ask 100 people, what does it mean to get it in your job? You're going to come back to your desk with 100 different ideas. 100 different ideas on what it means to get it is not getting it. That's not getting it. That's like the books on time management that share with you 1,001 productivity tips that save you, 25 seconds a day. That's not getting time management. Getting it is not about doing everything right. It's about knowing what the right things are and being able to do those things, doing the right things right. I'll give you an example. I say there are 5 principles to getting good at anything. At anything. When you understand the 5 principles, you can get good at anything. And there are 5 principles to Wall Street, to getting it on Wall Street. There's actually a sixth. It's the one in the middle. I call it value. If you remember nothing else from this presentation, remember this idea, value. You want to get paid more? You want to get promoted? You want to work less hours? Create more value. You want to create more career options? Create more value. You want to be of more value in your firm? Create more value. Value, 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 value. Create more value. Take one of these principles, performance. So if you walked around the office and you got your 100 ideas, many of them are just going to aggregate up into performance. So you take your 100 ideas and you generalize them, you aggregate them, and you chunk up to the highest value ideas. Now, all of the ideas about attention to detail, being good with clients, presenting ideas, they're all just nuts and bolts of being good at performance. So instead, focus on the principle. What's that? Understand what it means to truly perform in your job and be able to do it. The second one is people. A lot of random ideas on how you be good on Wall Street are people ideas. There's a very simple principle. It's a people business. It's a people business. So get good with people. Get exceptional with people. Exceptional with people. Process. Much of what goes on in our lives is process. Much of what goes on in your career is process. Efficiency, effectiveness, all of these ideas. They're all about principles. Understand the principles and be able to put them to work. Now, if you want to know the secret to Ray Dalio's success, people always say, well, how does he do what he does? What's his secret? He tells you. He tells you. Tells you his secret. Online, he has this document called Principles. Tells you the principles he lives by. Tells you the principles he runs Bridgewater by. Principles. That's the second step to getting it. The third step are the strategies. Now, the strategies are when you take the generalized ideas, because the frameworks and the principles are generalized ideas. They apply to your job, to everybody in your job. The strategies is when you apply them to yourself. You say, these are all generalized ideas, but what's your specific strategy for getting it? And I use Iron Man here, or Iron Woman. I say, because when Tony Stark steps onto that plate, whoop, that suit forms around him because it's built for him. The Iron Man suit is built for him. This Henry Ford quote, you can have any color you like as long as it's black. We don't live in that world anymore. We live in a world of customization. Your strategy for getting it is customized to you, your comparative advantage. What do you do well? If you don't like people, probably shouldn't be in a people business anyway, but if you don't like people, ask yourself, what's the strategy that you can apply that then works for you? If you're not good with people, get good with people. But what's the strategy that works for who you are, for what your strengths are? If you're technical and you're not good with people, then apply the strategy. Utilize that. So that's getting it. So if I have to generalize getting it, think about what we've covered so far. Figure out, define it. Where are you headed? Who do you want to be? Getting it. What are the frameworks, the models of success, the principles that you apply, and your individual strategy? Now, most people are mediocre, right? By definition, on average, they are. But people aren't born that way. They become that way. They become that way when they stop learning, when they stop thinking about these ideas, when they stop adding strategy and process and growth and development. And this is all about figuring out what is it that allows you to excel, allows you to keep getting what you want. And think about if you apply this to different models, say running the firm. The strategies would say there are very different models. If I think about Goldman Sachs, we had at some point Hank Paulson running the firm with Lloyd Blankfein. The same model to run the firm doesn't apply to the two of them. One's coming from banking, one's coming from fixed income. So there's a lot that you can learn about the models of success, but the strategies, Lloyd's strategy has to be very different to Hank's strategy. So what's your strategy? What's your strategy for getting what you want? This is step 3 and 4 of the process. I'm not going to talk about this. although this is the most important part. Plan it and execute it. Plan it and execute it. Again, how many people have a detailed plan for their careers? How many people even have a general plan versus head down, working hard, hoping it works out? Right? Plan it. The reason plan it is so important is because without a plan, even the best constructed house would fall down without a plan. Yet with a plan, you can build an entire city. A plan is only a plan if it's on paper. When I create plans for my clients, I often do it in project management software. Structured. If you want to run the firm, how do you do that? Here's an example of how I break that plan down. Divide and conquer. Run 3 tracks. Internal track. What do you need to do inside the firm? External track. What matters for commercial success and how do you achieve that? And your track, your development path. What's your path to building yourself into the person that can run the firm? Put that all into a system. Do it in Excel. Do it on paper. Some of my clients, we have 1 page. We don't have any project plan, but we work through it every week, methodically applying these ideas. Here's the other part about planning and execution. Your career is not like building a house. Everything's fixed, The house plan is fixed. The land is fixed. Your career is incredibly dynamic, so you need a dynamic process. Plan it, execute, test. Plan, execute, test. Where I am today is because I kept planning in 2-year increments. I would execute, and then I'd ask myself, am I where I want to be? What else do I need to do? And I would plan, execute, test. So you constantly run in this cycle, iterating towards what you want. They're the first 4 steps of the system of getting what you want. First 4 steps. Remember I said you can generalize this as process and skills. That's all the process stuff. What about skills? One of the reasons America is failing, one of the reasons our economy is failing, is because we've lost our hunger for learning. Schools are not a place of learning. It's like a prison. Kids don't want to be there. People have lost their thirst for learning. Many people graduate college, graduate business school, get their CFA, and they stop learning. Would you go and see a doctor? Would you want to see a doctor who'd been practicing for 40 years and hadn't upgraded his skills since he left medical school? I wouldn't. Leaders are readers. Leaders are always learning. Always learning. Always reading, always thinking, always creating new skills. Leaders are readers. One of my favorite books is a book by a top executive coach named Marshall Goldsmith. And the title of the book is What Got You Here Won't Get You There. The title tells you basically the whole book. Wherever you are in your career, whatever got you there is probably sufficient to keep you at that level. But if you're trying to get to the next level, you need to develop new skills. Think about the auto industry. What's the problem in the auto industry? Is that the writing was on the wall 40 years ago when they moved the first robots into the production line. We knew jobs were going to disappear. But the companies and the individuals didn't train people, didn't allow them to train, to upgrade, to transition. We talked about the specialist business on Wall Street. 10 years ago was a real business. It doesn't exist today. Vaporized. You needed to be thinking ahead, planning ahead, learning new skills. The problem with skills as well is that people say, well, they look across at someone in their office and they say, man, I wish I just had, the communication skills of that person. Or if I had the charisma of him, man, then I could do anything. You can learn these things. All skills can be learned. If one person can do something, every person can do it. Charisma is a myth. There's a book called The Charisma Myth. You can learn charisma, you can learn confidence, you can learn skills and tools. This is what I train people to do. So how do you do that? You thought you could get away without some math in this session, huh? 2 equations. How do you learn skills? Needs analysis, less current skills equals lesson plan. What do you need to get what you want? If you want to run the firm, what skills do you need to run the firm? What are your current skills? What's your lesson plan? How do you put that together? You know, it's like school. You show up to learn your ABCs and someone has an entire lesson plan. And that lesson plan takes you from day one all the way up to graduating college. Create a lesson plan for yourself. Second thing, take your lesson plan plus a process of learning equals getting skills. What's the process of learning? People say to me, I want to get good at communication skills. How do you do that? Go read a book, all right? You go read How to Win Friends and Influence People. Great book. But there's a problem. Most people read at the rate they read at 16, which is 250 words a minute. It takes them 3 weeks to read the book. By the time they're done, on average, they say, people remember 5% of the book that they read. So they dog-ear a few pages, they underline a few great ideas, and 3 months later, none of it is stuck. They're not using any of it. The process of learning is the opposite of that. It says, if you want to learn skills, if you want to go read books, what's your process to use those skills? One of the things that I got lucky with that I didn't anticipate, when I started reading all these books, I summarized them. I summarized these books. So thousands and thousands of pages of book summaries and ideas, which I then aggregated, created the principles, created summaries of summaries and summaries of summaries and summaries of summaries and recordings of summaries. So I listened to them and programmed them and trained myself in them. The same way you study your CFA, you don't just show up at class. You get the materials, you integrate the knowledge. You create a series of review notes. You sit and review them and you cram and you study and you test yourself by passing the exam. It's how you learn all skills. By the way, it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. If you read a book on speed reading, you'll get through a book in a few hours, period. But if you read 5 books on communications and you create 5 pages worth of notes and you study those and you practice them, bang, you will actually learn it. That's how you get skills. So what do you learn? What do you learn? These are the 4 Wall Street skills. They're the skills I most often train. They're the skills that, in my view, matter the most. And they're all about this one thing, impact. When you hit that bag, you punch all the way through. All the way through. It's all about impact. How much impact do you have in your time management? Forget all these productivity tips. The number one principle of time management is this. Shift your time to its highest value use. Shift your time to its highest value use. Communications. What are the principles? Here's just one. Communicate with intent. You have 2 choices. You can walk into a meeting, sit down and have a conversation. Or you can spend a few hours preparing exactly what you're going to say. And if you get good at communications, preparing your communications frames. Understanding the power of language, understanding metaphors, understanding stories, learning tools that you can use. Selling. How many people are truly good at selling? Selling is a skill set. It's a great skill set because you're always selling. You know, if you have kids, you're selling to your kids all the time. You're selling yourself in your firm. You're always selling your firm. You're always selling your ideas. Mindset. Mindset is my thing. I love this. I love this. When I started reading and doing all this stuff, it was full of all these ideas. What I realized a handful of years ago is all the ideas are one thing, but it's missing it. Knowledge matters a lot less than what you can do with it. Mindset is all about how does your mind work? What do you think? At the start of the session, I said forget the macro for a reason. Every minute you spend thinking about worrying about, well, where's the market headed, is a minute you're not thinking about how you solve it. Every time you have a negative thought is a minute you don't have a positive thought about what you can do about it. And mindset is not positive mental attitude. Oh man, I've got positive mental attitude. No. Mindset is training your mind like the way an athlete trains their mind. When Usain Bolt lines up on the blocks and looks down at the tape, when Usain Bolt looks down at the tape, he's run that race thousands of times in his mind. I read the other day, Greg Louganis used to rehearse immediately before every dive. immediately before, in his mind, see himself doing that dive 40 times over, and then he would dive. That's mindset. And a lot of what I do these days is I bring these tools to the business world, because it isn't about working harder, it's about working smarter. The most advanced tools of human performance, so you can have more impact. Bang. Bet you'd hit the bag well. All right, so all the way through I said there's two things, right? Process and skills. And I lied, because there's a third thing. People say to me all the time, they say, man, aren't you lucky? You're lucky you get to do what you want. I do what I want. And I've gone from where I was, not knowing what I was doing with my career, to doing what I love to do. I'm very lucky. And it's like Bill Gates. I saw Bill Gates a few years ago and Larry King, where Larry King was talking about Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers. And he said, you know, what do you make of you and Steve Jobs and these other tech entrepreneurs being lucky, being born in the right years? And Bill Gates said, it's true. I was lucky. But I also did something that many others didn't, which is I took action. I took action. Web 2.0. In 2000, the Valley was dead. Dead. Today, it's as alive as it's ever been, because the entrepreneurs didn't rest on their laurels. They got back up again and started again. They took action. The venture capitalists who had lost a bunch of money, right? Lost a bunch of money, took action, made more investments, focused on their process. Ford built tough. People on Wall Street are built tough. It's a tough job. It's a tough place to be. Ford, if Ford had stayed where it was when they rolled that first car off the production line, where would they be today, right? Constant reinvention. Ford reinvented itself again after the credit crisis. Action, taking action. So my final equation, process plus skills plus action equals getting what you want. Process plus skills plus action equals getting what you want. At the start of the presentation, I asked you one question. I said, keep this in the back of your mind. If there's just one thing that you could do that would make a massive difference in your career, what would that be? What would that be? What is that action that you can now take? What is that action that you can now take? Now, I have on my website, I have a number of free programs. My stuff is all about these free programs for people, teaching you my best ideas so you can take these ideas and do whatever it is that you want to do. I have a program called Getting the Job. What are the most advanced tools for getting the job? How do you get the job you truly want? You don't just show up doing a couple of hours of thinking. You have an entire system for getting the job. Getting to the top of your firm, how do you do that? And I have a whole program on managing your career. And this stuff is free. And if you want a copy of this presentation, an electronic copy, text your email to this number. Just text your email and you'll get a copy of the presentation sent to you.